today is the last day of our exhibition, Black and Revolutionary Histories, and Mina and Otto Hazra. Who has seen the exhibition? Please put your hand in the air. Okay. So a few people still need to a little bit. Okay. So a few people still need to see. For those, shortly explain why you're organizing this. So upstairs we have the Black Archives. In this archive, we found very, very interesting stories based on some unique and exceptional documents. One of the stories that we found, based on some of the documents that we found, is the story of Ermina and Otto Hazard. Shortly said, Otto Hazard, born in Suriname 1893. At the age of 16, hops on a boat destined to go to Amsterdam from Suriname, where he ends up in New York at the age of 16. Because the captain was a boy. In New York, he becomes one of the two co-founders of the Communist Party, but he's also part of an organization called the African Blood Brotherhood. From that position, he travels all around the world to Moscow, to South Africa 1930, to Hamburg, to Paris, trying to organize people, especially black people and people, for the world revolution from a communist perspective. After the Second World War, he ends up in Amsterdam. He becomes very active in this association on Suriname. And what's interesting to see was that he very early already in the 20th century tried to combine communism with a vision of uniting black people, you could say, Pan-Afrikanism. Well, maybe there are still a few seats in the middle. No problem. So it was such a fascinating story to us. And we found it good that a lot of people have never heard about it. Who had heard before about Otto Hazard before the exhibition? Before the exhibition, not like 7, 8 people. 8 out of maybe 40, 50 people. So that's not a lot. And I have to say this is actually a high percentage. Usually it's only 1 or 2, maybe 3 people. So that's why we decided to make an exhibition, to make the story more known. And because we think it's still very relevant and interesting. So we are very happy that we have a special guest today who will talk about Nkrumahism and Tourism, the ideology of the African Revolution. And his name is Djibo Sobukwe. So please give him a warm applause.
Okay. Goedemiddag allemaal. Paitang. Bon tarde. So, greetings everyone, friends, comrades, brothers and sisters. I just want to start by thanking my friend Djibouti in the back and for making the connection between myself and the Black Archives. And I have a little gift I have brought from Philadelphia, where I live, for Djibouti. It's a book. When you have a minute, you can come up and get it. I'll put it here. And I've seen so much great work done by the Black Archives recently online. I'm on Djibouti's email listserv, the Grapevine. And I get all the emails back in the States about the great work the Black Archives has done. So I would like to present this to Mitchell Assayas as a gift to contribute to the library of the Black Archives. The name of the book is Ready for Revolution, the political life of Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, who I worked closely with the last 7 years of his life. So, having done that brief introduction, I want to start by telling a little bit more about my own background, which I think is interesting, and the Pan-African influences on my own line of thinking and living. So I was born in Aruba in 1952. But first, let me tell you about my parents, because that's also a very interesting story. My father was an African Surinamer. He was born in 1918. He went to Holland when he was about 17 or 18 to study before the war. He arrived in Holland around 1938. He endured, the war here in Holland, and he studied dentistry, became a dentist, licensed by the Dutch. And then to do postgraduate work, he went to the United States, to New York, studied postgraduate dentistry at Columbia. So he had a friend there from Guyana who was also studying. And the friend knew some people in Philadelphia. So one weekend he said, let's go down to Philadelphia, and I have some lady friends there who I'd like to meet and we can hang out. So my father said, sure. So he went down really on a blind date and met my mother, who is an African American from Philadelphia. And they courted, and a few years later, in 1947 or so, they got married. And my father said, well, I don't like this country too much. It's kind of cold. I'm really, tired of this cold weather. And they don't recognize my dental degree anyway, so let's go to Aruba instead of Suriname, because Aruba is former Dutch colony as well. So they went to Aruba and had a family, and that's where we were born. I'm the second of three. My sister is older. She's in the audience here, as well as my wife. I'd like to introduce my wife. Her name is Reverend Dr. Sharon Graham Sobukwe. She's also here in the audience. And my old childhood friend from Aruba, 8 years old, we were together in the Boy Scouts, Mrs. Dieter Blom. So while I still speak some Dutch, it's not the greatest. My first language really has always been English, because of my African American mother. Those were the first words and sentences she taught to us. But then in Aruba, of course, I went to school for the first 16 years in Dutch. All the reading and writing was in Dutch. And we learned Papiamento as well from the people, the local people. So I went to the States, unlike my brother and sister who came here. Well, my brother kind of did a little bit of both. And I came to the States the year after Martin Luther King's assassination in 1969. And I stayed with my grandmother who lived in West Philadelphia. Then I went to an all-white prep school because my parents still lived in Aruba. And, a lot was going on in the States. I could still buy Black Panther Party newspapers at the corner store. So then, the Vietnam War was raging. There was a lot going on. So the prep school I went to was a little sheltered. There were a lot of international students. So I got extra lessons in English, because I was still predominantly writing and reading in Dutch. But that changed quickly. And then I wanted to go to a college that had more black people, because I was one of just a few blacks at my high school. So I applied to 2 HBCUs. HBCUs in the United States stands for Historically Black Colleges. And I applied to Howard University, which is a pretty famous college, and Lincoln University. And I got accepted to both. My aunt suggested I go to Lincoln, so I went to Lincoln. Now, when I got to Lincoln University, it was almost, well, even the white high school was a culture shock to me, coming from Aruba as a teenager. And when I got to Lincoln, it was all black college. It was another cultural experience, but I was sucking it up like a sponge. So just to tell you a little bit about Lincoln University in the 70s, I got to Lincoln University in September of 1971. So this is during the Black Power time. Black is beautiful. That's the culture that's going around. And you know, the political discussions is all, you know, the black culture is omnipresent everywhere on this campus. When the campus is not in the city, it's kind of in the country. So Lincoln University is also the college where Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah attended, the first president of Ghana. Now, while I didn't really realize who he was at first, there's a building on the campus named after him. I was able to meet black people from all over the world on this college campus. It was like a mini, you know, international place for people of African descent. And I befriended people from West Africa. One of my best friends was from Gambia. He's the first person that told me about Kwame Nkrumah. We went to the hall, and you know, I didn't do much outside reading. I was, you know, just involved in my studies. And but he told me one thing that Kwame Nkrumah said, which is that, you know, all black people in the world belong to the African nation and are Africans. And until Africa is free, no black man will be free. So he told me this. You know, I was, like I said, I was about 19 years old, 18. And we had a, you know, great time. We played soccer, what we call in the States soccer, you call it football here. Of course, I played football in Aruba, so that's not foreign to me. So, but Lincoln University was a very powerful experience. Also, apartheid was raging in South Africa at that time. So I just participated in anti-apartheid demonstrations on the campus. You know, we're very, very involved with that, political discussions. It was a very enriching experience for me. So I graduated from Lincoln. I got a chance to go back to Aruba. My parents gave me a gift to travel to Suriname, and went to Haiti, Dominican Republic, came back to the States. And then I met someone in an organization. Actually, you know, I was interested in his books because I had this thirst for knowledge about Africa, and I saw his books, and you know, the first time I picked up the book by Sheikh Hamza Diop called The African Origin of Civilization in 1977. And anyway, this young brother was he was in an organization. He said, "Look, we read 5 pages every day about our history, politics, economics, and everything that affects our people." And I said, "Wow, 5 pages every day." And I wasn't really a reader, you know. I like sports more than reading, and but I was fascinated about, you know, this information. So just to make a long story short, I'll go quickly. I joined an organization called the All African People's Revolutionary Party, which is really an organization founded by Kwame Nkrumah after when he wrote the book, Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare in 1966 and 67. And he called for the founding of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And later, you know, Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, became his secretary in Guinea, and started organizing for the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Came back to the United States in '72 and continued to organize, build that organization. So in 1978, I joined this organization, and it was just a world of information for me that had a big impact on my consciousness. And the rest really is history. I remained very active in this organization for more than 30 years. The last 7 years of the life of Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, who died in 1998 of cancer. The last 7 years of his life, I worked pretty closely with him. I was elected to the Central Committee of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, and he asked, after I wrote a short paper about Nkrumah's book called Consciencism, just one little item in there, he asked me to join the task force called the Nkrumah Ture Task Force. So the last 6, 7 years of his life, whenever he came to Philadelphia, he stayed at our house. And Sharon, my wife, was also on the Central Committee. So we worked pretty closely with Kwame. He wrote letters. You know, we would see him at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. It was Central Committee meeting. So that's just a little bit about myself, you know, which I think is important because both of my parents were born in 2 different places. When we go to Suriname, they tell us, you know, my wife says, well, are you an African American? And they say, well, we're African Americans too. We're just African South Americans, as opposed to African North Americans. So anyway, that had an impact on my Pan-African forming. So today, I want to talk about the ideology that the All-African People's Revolutionary Party holds, which is a combination of 2 ideologues and 2 foremost practitioners of the Pan-African tradition. One is Djibo Sobukwe, who I already said was the first president of Ghana in 1957. And on the right, you see a picture of Ahmed Sékou Touré, who was the first president of independent Guinea in 1958. And so what I'll present today is kind of a combined lecture about the 2 ideologues and some of their key contributions to the ideology. I have some other lectures, but I think this group is pretty highly developed, so I think this is a good lecture for this group. So I have here the ideology of Nkrumah Touréism is a combination of the ideology of Kwame Nkrumah and Sékou Touré, and they are the embodiment of the revolutionary Pan-African tradition. And just to tell you a little bit about their relationship, Sékou Touré was the first president of Ghana. Sékou Touré was the first president of Guinea. And when the French left Guinea, they took almost everything. They stripped Guinea bare of all of its infrastructure. The French said, look, we built this, we're taking it all out. Since you want independence and you don't want our help anymore, we're going to take everything. So Guinea was a very poor country, and Sékou Touré and Kwame Nkrumah had a close relationship already. And so Nkrumah said, well, you know what, we'll give you a financial loan. So Ghana gave Guinea a financial loan at the beginning of its independence. So this made them even closer, you know. Then also they formed a union with Mali called the Guinea-Ghana-Mali Union in 1961. That made them also closer. Nkrumah understood that without Africa's total unity, he said Ghana's independence will be meaningless, because he understood the importance of African unity all over the continent. Because, it's like divide and conquer. When the colonists can divide you, you're weaker than if you're united. So, let's see here. The ideology of Nkrumah Touréism provides a complete social, political, philosophical, and economic theory which constitute a comprehensive network of principles, beliefs, values, morals, rules, which guide our behavior, determines the form which our institutions and organizations will take, and acts as a cohesive force to bind us together, guide and channel our revolutionary action toward the achievement of Pan-Afrikanism and the inevitable triumph of socialism worldwide. Okay, so one of the key concepts that was promoted by both Kwame Nkrumah and Sékou Touré is culture and ideology. The Nkrumah's Touré's understanding of culture and ideology is a key aspect of this combined ideology and critical in transforming levels of political consciousness, and it is the focus of this presentation. The emphasis on culture and ideology is expressed in the slogan that culture and ideology are the fighter's first weapons. Our ideology teaches us that the first principle of the revolution is that the people are supreme. That the masses of people are the makers of history. Everything begins with and ends with the people. It follows, as Secretary teaches us, that people who create culture Okay, so culture. Okay. So as it says here, so this concept is very interesting. It says that culture is the container of ideology. Okay, Secretary says that the people who create culture create at the same time ideology and use it. That culture is the framework of ideology, and they develop and use it and as they go. Culture is the container which carries ideology as its contents. The consumption of culture simultaneously involves the ingestion of ideology, since ideology is contained in culture. And as it says here, culture and ideology are reciprocally reinforcing and in dialectical motion. Ideology is the immaterial aspect of culture. The consumption of culture is simultaneously involved in the ingestion of ideology, since ideology is contained in culture. Ideology in turn acts upon the people and the culture. Most societies have competing cultures and ideologies, but at any given time, only one is dominant. The dominant ideology is that of the dominant group, i.e. oppressor versus oppressed, revolutionary versus counter-revolutionary, colonizer versus colonized, etc. Even societies that do not have contending ideologies, as Nkrumah says, social contention is always present. Okay, so now we come to what is ideology. You know, a lot of people discuss this term even in bourgeois politics, but you know, this ideology has a particular concept of it. And so in the book Consciousism, which is Nkrumah's book on the ideology of the African Revolution, he says that he offers several defining characteristics of what ideology is. The ideology of the society, he says, is total and displays itself in political theory, economic theory, social theory, and moral theory, and uses these as instruments and principles guiding a behavioral code of conduct. Ideology aims at uniting the actions of millions towards specific goals, although an ideology can be largely implicit. And ideologies are not necessarily a body of ideas written down on paper, and the fact that they're not written down doesn't prevent it from being an ideology. A revolutionary ideology does not merely express that a present social order be abolished, it also seeks to defend and maintain a new social order, which it introduces, such as socialism, for example. Okay, next slide. Okay, and here, this, I'm not going to go back. Okay, this concept is very key as well. Anyone's cultural consumption determines their ideological direction. So through the consumption of culture, ideology impacts upon and directs the people's thinking and acting towards precise objectives in service of the ideology under capitalism. The ideology of the anti-people's class controls and directs our people's thinking and acting to advance capitalist interests. To change and maintain the development of political consciousness in a positive direction, we must replace a reactionary ideological diet with a revolutionary ideological diet that includes the revolutionary African personality.
What is meant for the anti-people's class?
Okay, that's a good question. So Sekou Touré, instead of using the term ruling class, he uses the term anti-people's class versus people's class. And Nkrumah, on the other hand, used ruling class versus exploited classes or oppressed classes. We'll talk more about that later, but just to answer your question particularly. And here at the end, I say that includes the revolutionary African personality. I'll talk a little more about that later too, but just to give you a little background on that, there was back in the history of the development of Pan-Afrikanism, there was an African historian born in the Caribbean named Edward Blyden. He's an important person because he's the first one that advanced the term the African personality, the need to assert the African personality. And you know, it's interesting because Dr. Borges, I guess I'm pronouncing his name right, he was talking about the tradition of black thinkers, you know. And so what I'm continuing really the trend that he's already started here in the Black Archives with a tradition of other black thinkers. These are black thinkers from Africa, which we should also incorporate in our complete revolutionary thinking and analysis. And so there's a history to this concept of the African personality that goes back to 1897, which is the first time this brother, who was born in the Caribbean, by the way, St. Thomas, advanced the term the African personality. Because like also Dr. Borges was saying, European culture was attacking the African, even the sense of being human, but also beyond that, our whole intellectual tradition, our whole culture. Because Europeans said that Africa had no culture, that Africa had no history. So this is what our people were up against in the 1800s. And like Dr. Borges said, you know, some of that is resurfacing. So Edward Blyden was one of the first people who said, no, we have a culture, we have a history. And he researched in the 1800s already African history, going back to Egypt, you know, to show that Egypt was black. And so he was one of the first ones. And he asserted the need. He said, look, we have a personality as a people, as a black people, as an African people. And we have to assert the African personality rather than assume a European personality. So it's a term about a battle of culture, a battle of values and that thing. So now, Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Touré both advanced this concept even more and added a revolutionary analysis to it, so that it includes other revolutionary concepts like a class analysis, like an anti-capitalist analysis, you know. And so that has developed this concept of the revolutionary African personality. Even Frantz Fanon, used the term depersonalization. So in order for colonial subjects to engage in decolonization, they have to repersonalize themselves with their own personality and combat the depersonalization that colonialism has imposed upon its colonial subjects. Whatever your personality may be, that's for you to figure out, obviously. But in this case, we're talking about the revolutionary African personality. Okay, next slide. so it's important to remember now, your cultural consumption determines your ideological direction. So the concepts that I've just explained and read are more easily, this is a little graphic that I created to help in the understanding of this concept of culture and ideology and how it works on people all over the world, really. So this is the cultural pyramid, and as our ideology teaches us, that culture is the container and ideology is its content. The material base of culture is at the bottom here of the pyramid, and that is the forces and mode of production. And just to explain what that is, the forces of production is the working masses, including their tools and technologies and knowledge. The mode of production characterizes the class relationships people have with one another, which is conditioned by who owns and controls what is produced, whether the majority own or whether a minority own. So, people develop ideas as a result of the mode of production that they live in, and since most of us live in a capitalist colonial mode of production, that has definite impacts on our ideas and our actions. So now, if you move up to the next level in the triangle, you see the bold word ideology. That's the important word that circulates like blood through this triangle, this cultural triangle, the cultural container. Because ideology is constantly being developed in the people, and ideology, Nkrumah says, philosophy is an instrument of ideology. So, philosophy you see on both the left and the right side, and in philosophy also contains ethics and values. And that's where the battle of values comes in. And so the middle part is universal culture that kind of is shared by people all over the world in society. The top part of the triangle, it says personality is the seeds of nationalism, customs, language. That's the specific part of culture and ideology that each people has. Each people has their own culture and ideology. And but that's the smallest part, really. But again, that word personality is in there, that involves customs, aspects of your culture that are particular to a particular people. And then on the outside, well, in this triangle, you can see there's a line straight down the middle. That's an important line because it divides. On the right side, we have counter-revolutionary, reactionary culture and ideology. And on the left side is revolutionary and progressive culture and ideology. And so this represents really a class struggle. This triangle is a triangle that really all people carry, whether they're conscious of it or not. And this is a battle that's constantly going on in human beings and in society. And as we said earlier, one is dominant and at any given time, although it's always in motion, And of course, it's largely also impacted by the forces and mode of production. Now, Sekou has a very interesting conception of class struggle. It's somewhat different than the typical Marxian understanding of class struggle. Sekou says that reflecting the duality in nature, all humans have a human element of the people and a human element of the anti-people. And this combination forms a permanent class struggle in all people. And so, this is very, very interesting concept that, most people don't have as an understanding of class struggle because, in the Marxian sense, class struggle starts with the evolution of classes. But Sekou says, no, class struggle starts even before the formation of classes because your ideas represent either humanist ideas, which he calls the ideas for the people, or anti-humanist ideas, which he calls anti-people ideas. And because people's actions start with the idea first, he says power begins with conception and is only realized in practice or action. So in conception, people have both ideas, and so that's a very interesting concept of class struggle that Sobukwe brings to the ideology, other people could say, well, the right side of this triangle represents the ruling class, the ideology of the ruling class. The left side of the triangle represents the ideology of the oppressed classes. Among the oppressed classes, there are various grades of this ideology because, like I said, it's all kind of mixed up. But all people have both tendencies. Some are more dominant on one, and others are more dominant on the other. But on the left side, where the so-called oppressed classes, there is three levels of psychology, going on. There's the psychology of the oppressed, which François Fanon called the psychology of the oppressed. And those are people who are just down and out, maybe they're criminals, they're really, horribly, they're depressed, they're just committing murders randomly, those kind of people. But then the masses of the people are at a level of consciousness of resistance. So they intuitively know that, oppression is not good, it's negative, and they're intuitively resisting it in various ways. That represents the masses of the people. Now there's a small group of people that have a revolutionary consciousness. And so the idea of revolutionaries is to move the masses from the consciousness of resistance to revolutionary consciousness. So let me continue. So we should keep this slide in mind as I go through some of the rest of the thinking. And again, the consumption of culture impacts and directs our people's thinking and acting towards precise objectives in service of the ideology. Okay, under capitalism, the ideology of the anti-people's class controls and directs our people's thinking and acting to advance capitalist interests. Our people have insufficient consciousness of this ideological domination. On the other hand, our working masses maintain some aspects of our ideology, the ideology of the people's classes. But again, our working masses have insufficient consciousness of our ideology. These competing and conflicting ideologies inside of us result in a condition of political schizophrenia. So, that's a common aspect of colonized people. We suffer from a political schizophrenia as a result of it. Thus, our task is to help our masses to become conscious of the ideology which is motivating and directing our thoughts and actions. Our masses must become conscious of the content of ideas carried in the cultural container. Some of this political schizophrenia is elaborated by François Fanon, in his writings, Black Skin, White Mass, towards the African Revolution, etc. The people produce culture to consume for improving their lives. The consumption of revolutionary culture is productive and transforming. Through it, revolutionary ideology guides us towards liberation. Conversely, the consumption of reactionary culture is destructive and deforming. Through it, capitalist ideology leads us to serve capitalist profit-seeking goals. For example, a rap song explaining the glory of African history creates ideas and emotions of pride and self-love in our youth, resulting in productive social relationships. However, a rap song praising the gangbanger for getting paid encourages ideas and emotions of selfishness and self-hatred, leading to the normalization of slinging dope and drive-bys. to change and maintain the development of political consciousness in a positive direction, we must replace a reactionary ideological diet with a revolutionary ideological diet through cultural revolution. We must systematically raise the level of consciousness. This means that the battle for Africans all over the world is involved first for power over our own thinking, That's why this question of ideology is so important. Because as a result of colonialism, capitalist oppression, we don't control our own thinking. Most of the time, capitalism controls a lot of our thinking. Colonialism controls a lot of our thinking. So we have to transform this and grasp hold of our thinking. And that's why, as Dr. Tony Borges said, these thinkers are so important because it gives us tools to analyze and dissect this psychology of oppression that we're subjected to. Okay, and that battle starts with the battle of values too. As Martin Luther King made a profound statement one time where he said we need a revolution of values. And values are the crux part of ideology. If you remember the triangle, by the way, I have some copies. 5 more minutes? Okay. Well, let me hurry up. I got 5 more minutes. Okay. So, let's see. So we'll go to this slide here. Tippett teaches us that without revolutionary consciousness, there's no revolution. History teaches that it's created and developed through ideological education and revolutionary practice. That's in his book, Strategy and Tactics of the Revolution. Thus, the formula for revolutionary consciousness that he gives is ideological education and revolutionary practice equals revolutionary consciousness, i.e. plus RP equals RC. To achieve categorical conversion from revolutionary conscience of resistance to revolutionary, from the conscience of resistance to revolutionary consciousness requires theological training and transformation in the struggle to build or advance a revolutionary organization. Through increasing levels of ideological education and revolutionary practice, a revolutionary consciousness is forged. The organizers gain conscious control of the ideology which motivates and directs their thinking and acting through systematic consumption of revolutionary culture. You can go to the next slide. Okay, these are just my references, and I'll close with that. Again, the slogan, ideology is the people's first weapon. Thank you. Oh, so you want to see the reference? Yeah, so the mostly books by Numa and Victor and one article that I wrote that I presented at a conference 2 years ago at Lincoln University. Questions? Yes, you have questions right here on the first row?
Yes. I do.
Yes.
We have about 10 minutes for Q&A, so keep it short and concise and to the point.
So, I would like to know how does the triangle tie into the base and the superstructure, and also this idea of historical materialism?
Okay, yes. Well, the base, as I pointed out, is the forces in the mode of production. So, that's the driving force of ideas as well. So if it's a capitalist material base of the production, that will drive most of the ideas in society. Whatever society you live in, that's going to drive them, because ideologies or comprehensive. Like Nkrumah said, they're total. They seek to dominate everybody's ideas, everybody's thinking. So, you know, it's not a surprise that most of us have these thoughts, or colonial thoughts for that matter. You know, people who are coming from a colonial experience have dominant thoughts of the colonizer. And because that's still the mode of production, and that dictates the thinking. And so that's part of historical materialism, you know. Now, of course, Africa has its history as well, you know, and has also been through different modes of production, you know, communalism, you know, feudalism, etc. So that's part of, you know, Africa's historical materialism as well. But, you know, and then as a result of colonization of the world and imperialism, you know, and the transatlantic slave trade, obviously, you know, as a result of our people's labor, Europe was built, you know, America was built, the U.S., as a result of the labor of the Africans, you know. A great book that explains that is Walter Rodney's book called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And if you, as a matter of fact, if you want to read another book on how Europe and the United States underdeveloped South America, a good book is called The Open Veins of Latin America by Eduardo Galeano. And those two books tell you how Europe and America underdeveloped almost the whole world, two-thirds of the world. You know? Now, I haven't found a book yet on how Europe underdeveloped Asia, but it's probably out there. I just don't know that. Any other questions? Yes.
I probably don't need a mic. I'll speak up. Just by a quick show of hands, it's a question and then a statement.
Yeah.
By a quick show of hands, how many people here were born in Africa? Not one. Now my statement is, I was born in New York City. I grew up with a sense of consciousness, a sense of revolution. However, what I never see is that it always comes from the diaspora. It comes from us, always reaching out to Africa. So we're going to have this Pan-Afrikanism conversation. We need to have Africans themselves having these conversations with us, because I've been othered my whole life by Africans, and I love them. I've always reached out. It's almost like a kid reaching out to a mother that doesn't love them. And I'll give you an example. Mother Africa has Africans in India, the cities. Mother Africa has Africans in Guyana, what do they call them? Not the Moors, the people in the box. I'm not going to say what Maroons, my man. So Africa has all this stuff out. But then when I try to speak with my African brothers, when I'm in Asia, when I'm in other parts of the world, they always other me. So I asked another brother, I said, how come when I try to speak to my brothers, he said two things. He said, one, they don't like you. Number two, they want to be you. And I said, I don't really feel that, and I don't play that African American versus African thing. However, I never see the bridge being built from Africa. If I ever violated my wife in a certain way, it's on me to make things right with her, not for her to beg for my forgiveness. And we in the diaspora are constantly begging for Africa, please accept us, please accept us. India, who has a lot of people outside of India, has a special, it's not citizenship, it's a residency that they offer to Indians who have been displaced by English colonialism. Africa does not. In Ghana, they had in 2005 a special visa for us, but nothing after that. So in Benin, the president of Benin got down on his knees and said he's sorry for what his ancestors' role in the African slave trade. But we never talk about that. We never talk about that. We want to talk about what the white colonialists did, and yes, we have to hold them accountable. However, if we keep reaching out to Africa, building that bridge from everywhere, Brazil, India, to Africa, and they're not building on the same side, it's never going to work. Pan-African, like you said, Kwame Nkrumah, he's from Trinidad.
Yeah.
So if he's from Trinidad, he's reaching out to Africa. Where are the Africans reaching out to us? Today you have from the EFF, the economic freedom fighters in South Africa. You have Julius Malema, who said, "I'm working for black people in general and Africans in particular. I can respect that." Where are the Julius Malemas of today? That's my question.
Well, you know, the Pan-African...
No, let's just back. Come on.
You know, as I said, you know, well, even going back to Sekou, you know, what he said is that there's anti-people and people going on in all of us, you know, and including Africans on the continent, including Africans here, everywhere. So colonialism has dominated the thinking of Africans on the continent as well as Africans in the diaspora. You know, my wife and I have traveled to Africa several times. Our experience with Africans has been overwhelmingly gracious, welcoming. I mean, you know, they don't say African hospitality for nothing, you know. I mean, you know, Kwame Nkrumah talked about the African personality, and the best values of Africans are humanism and egalitarianism. When we went to Africa, the hospitality was overwhelming. We went to Ghana, we went to South Africa. It was incredible, you know. Now, since you're from New York, you know, I don't know if you've ever been down south, but even in the United States, when you travel down, my wife's mother's family, she's from South Carolina. When we went down there,
I've been to Colombia.
Yeah, you know, they live in Orangeburg. When we go down there, even the hospitality is more than it is in Philly and New York.
Right.
You know, so there's a difference. And then if you go to the Caribbean, it's even more, you know. Now you go to Africa, then you really get it. South Africa, Ghana, we experienced the utmost hospitality. So, you know, everybody's experience is different. You know, they might have told you, we don't know you, you ain't our brother. That's not what we got.
But the fact that there's not
that's
one
not what we got.
Here,
and of
there's
course,
not one here. There's not one African in this room. That's why I asked that question.
Yeah, well, you know.
So that's my point. If there's not one person born on the continent of Africa trying to throw us a lifeline back to the motherland, then I have to question I love Pan-Africanism.
Well, there is one person, they're not in this room. That doesn't mean they don't exist.
They're not in this room right now. Okay, so this is where,
that doesn't mean they don't exist.
I know they exist.
Okay.
In the Netherlands, this is the hot spot right now for this talk, right? So you made a statement also about the colonizers taking advantage of our division, essentially. And I believe you said it was dividing the conquered, right?
Yeah.
I offer
That's why Kwame Nkrumah
Okay.
decided to unite, his main mission was to unite all the countries in Africa.
And
but even he got pushed back too.
Right, of course he was
Yeah.
pushed back.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I also
Because there's some neo-colonial minded Africans. That's why he wrote a book called Neo-Colonialism, The Last Stage of
So
Imperialism.
now my second question is, shout out to Gaddafi because he also tried to organize.
Exactly. Now you're talking, bro.
No, I'm very well versed in it. So instead of saying they divided the conquered, I think they conquered the divided due to tribalism. Because when you are separated, it's easy to conquer. So I asked a brother from Nigeria, I said, oh, do you know Anthony Joshua? Yes, he is from my tribe. So it's this tribal thing that has us separated, which allows people to come in and then destroy and separate us much more.
Even that
So I'm
goes
going to wrap up. I'm going to wrap up because I'm from Brooklyn, so
somebody
I'm
else's
right?
chance, you know.
All right, so look.
Black Archives will invite you to speak next
Okay,
time.
check it out. So when the Arabs enslaved
Yes, you
them,
know so much.
and then they taught the Portuguese, and then they taught the Spanish, who taught the Belgians, who taught the Dutch. After the Arabs, did we not learn? After the Dutch, did we not learn? So it's either one or two things. The African has been very dumb, which I know we are not, or there have been a pocket of Africans who have been complicit in the sale of their own people in the diaspora. And the fact that there is not one African in this room trying to make peace with us, and we're always trying to make peace with them, tells me that for this Pan-Africanism to work, they got to get on board. And I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, space for one more question. Then we'll have to Nobody? Okay. Thank you. And then one. Based on this booklet, I quickly ran upstairs to the archive because in the archive we found this book. It's an autobiography of Nkrumah, as you can see. First edition, and it also contains a few interesting newspaper articles. This one from 1966. about the book you just mentioned, Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. And as I said, this day is the last day of the exhibition that are revolutionary about Otto and Hermina Huisraad. So my question was, what were the views of Nkrumah and today on, black communism? What was their relation to that kind of ideology and movements?
That's a good question. Well, Nkrumah said that the total liberation of Africa, he defines Pan-Afrikanism as the total liberation of Africa under scientific socialism. And he said until that's achieved, no African in the world would be free. In his book, Class Struggle in Africa, he said that once Africa can develop a unified socialist continent, it will be a major contribution to world communism. So he definitely promoted that and stated that. And he had instructors from some countries from the the Soviet bloc in Ghana who taught at the Winneba Institute in Ghana. Now, Sekou Touré, and you have to understand at this time, a lot of people associated the word communism with Soviet brand of socialism. And and a lot of countries wanted to stay neutral. That's how the whole non-aligned movement was started, because they didn't want these two big blocks between capitalist USA and socialist Russia, and many of these countries, didn't want to. They wanted to determine their own destiny, so they didn't want to be aligned with either one. And that's how the whole Bandung Conference started in Indonesia, and it was an outgrowth, that whole concept. So Sekou Touré was real careful not to, be seen as in the communist orbit. And so he strongly declared socialism, but he also said that, I don't want to I don't want the party, the PDG, to be a communist party. So he kind of straddled the fence on that.
Thank you. All right, I think there are no further questions. I would like to thank you as well for your contribution, and we have spoken as well for some other game. Got a small, nice tote bag with the black archives on it. Fits your outfit, so that's good. This was organized via Djibouti. You can buy some of Djibouti's books in the back. He's where they're going. But he said you didn't require payment, but we still want to give you some form of payment. So we've got a nice bill about with Anton the Commoner from the 1980s in Suriname. He was one of the freedom fighters from Suriname. And